This moment is not random. It is not a dramatic interruption or a warning meant to create urgency. It arrives the way morning light enters a quiet room, without force, without demand. God does not rush, and God does not repeat what you are already prepared to understand. Today feels different, not because something extraordinary is happening, but because you are ready to notice what has been present. Readiness is often misunderstood as action. Many people think they are ready when they feel motivated, energized, or certain. But real readiness is quieter. It shows up as the ability to pause without anxiety. It feels like standing still without the need to escape the moment. When this kind of readiness appears, signs no longer need to be loud. This message is not asking you to decide anything right now. It is not pushing you toward a conclusion. It is simply drawing attention to a place where your attention is no longer scattered. God offers clarity when confusion has done its work. Confusion exhausts the mind of false options, leaving space for understanding to settle. You may have been trying to figure things out for a long time, asking questions, weighing possibilities, searching for reassurance. That effort was not wasted. It softened you. It reduced the illusion that everything can be solved by force. Weariness often precedes wisdom because it strips away unnecessary striving. The sign you are encountering today does not come with excitement. It does not demand belief. It feels more like a quiet recognition, a sense that something has already been decided internally, even if you have not named it yet. God often speaks through what no longer argues inside you. Clarity does not always feel uplifting. Sometimes it feels like relief. Sometimes it feels like simplicity. Sometimes it feels like realizing you cannot continue in the same way. These are not failures. They are adjustments. When direction aligns, resistance decreases. This moment matters because it carries weight without pressure. Importance does not always feel heavy. True importance often feels grounding. When something is right, it does not push you forward. It steadies you where you are. You may notice that certain thoughts feel less urgent today. Certain worries do not grip as tightly. Certain explanations feel unnecessary. This is not avoidance. It is discernment beginning to function again. God's guidance often restores discernment before it changes circumstances. Nothing here is meant to impress you. There is no spectacle. There is only recognition. God respects your capacity to understand without being overwhelmed. That respect is why this sign is simple. You might feel tempted to look away, not because you doubt what is happening, but because clarity requires honesty. When something becomes clear, some paths quietly close. Looking away can feel easier than acknowledging that shift. God does not force you to look. The invitation is gentle. This sign is not here to tell you what will happen next. It is here to show you where peace resides and where it quietly drains. Peace is not comfort. Peace is coherence. When your thoughts, values, and actions stop pulling in different directions, peace appears naturally. God's guidance often arrives as less friction rather than more emotion. It does not always feel inspiring. It often feels stabilizing. Stability does not excite the nervous system. It reassures it. Today may feel like a single day, something that will pass. And in one sense, it will. But moments like this are not important because they repeat. They are important because they clarify. Once clarity is present, repetition is no longer necessary. God does not withhold signs to test you. Signs appear when you are capable of carrying what they reveal. A single moment of clarity can be enough to change how you walk forward, even if nothing else changes immediately. You may notice that you are less interested in convincing yourself or others, less interested in rehearsing possibilities, less interested in chasing certainty. This is not disengagement. It is maturity taking its place. The sign you are encountering today is not teaching you something new. It is allowing you to accept what you already know. Acceptance often feels quieter than discovery, but it is far more powerful. You do not need to hold on to this moment. Trying to preserve it would create tension. Let it rest where it is. Clarity does not need protection. It carries itself. For now, it is enough to acknowledge that today feels different. Not louder, not brighter, simply clearer. That clarity is not asking you to move yet. It is asking you to see. And seeing, right now, is enough. This sign appears only once, because clarity works differently than reassurance. Reassurance repeats itself, because it is trying to soothe doubt. Clarity arrives when doubt has already loosened its grip. God sends a sign when understanding is ready to land, not when it needs to be chased. Repetition would dilute responsibility. If clarity kept returning, the mind would learn to postpone response. It would say, "I will wait for the next sign." God does not guide that way. Guidance respects your capacity to carry what you see without needing constant reminders. Readiness is not about having answers. It is about no longer being pulled apart by questions. You may still wonder. You may still hesitate. But the questions no longer dominate your inner space. When confusion stops demanding attention, clarity can enter quietly. This is why the sign comes once. It is not scarcity. It is trust. God is not withholding support. God is acknowledging maturity. When a person can recognize direction without being pushed, guidance steps back. Many people fear that a one-time sign means abandonment. It means the opposite. It means you are no longer being managed. You are being trusted. Guidance shifts from instruction to accompaniment. At this stage, clarity creates responsibility, but not pressure. Responsibility here means that what you see cannot be unseen. You are not punished for ignoring it, but ignoring it becomes more tiring than honoring it. You might notice an internal resistance that says, "What if I am wrong?" This question does not invalidate the sign. It confirms that you are taking it seriously. God does not require certainty. Direction is not certainty. It is alignment. Alignment does not guarantee outcomes. It guarantees coherence. When you move in alignment, effort feels cleaner. Even mistakes feel instructive rather than destabilizing. Earlier in your life, you may have asked for signs repeatedly. Silence then did not mean refusal. It meant preparation was still ongoing. Sometimes questions must exhaust themselves before answers can settle. Now, something has shifted. The same questions may still exist, but they do not carry the same weight. They no longer demand resolution before movement. That is readiness. The one-time nature of this sign is not meant to scare you into action. It is meant to respect your agency. God does not want obedience driven by urgency. God invites choice grounded in understanding. When clarity is present, you do not need reinforcement. You need space to live from it. Repetition would interrupt that process. This is why the sign does not argue with you. It does not persuade. It does not insist. It simply appears and waits to be recognized. You may feel a subtle shift in posture, metaphorically or physically. Less leaning forward, less bracing, more upright presence. That is what trust feels like from the inside. This clarity does not demand a dramatic decision. It may only ask that you stop pretending you do not know. Often, that is the most significant change. God's guidance does not cling. It points, then releases. Not because it is finished with you, but because you are capable of continuing without being pulled. If this feels heavy, that is understandable. Maturity carries weight. But it is a steady weight, not a crushing one. It grounds rather than burdens. The sign comes once because it is enough. Not because nothing else will ever come, but because this moment does not require more. You are not being rushed forward. You are being invited to stand where you are with honesty, and that honesty is the doorway clarity uses. There is no loss in this singularity. There is dignity. What you do next does not need to be immediate. It only needs to be aligned. That alignment begins by accepting that this one moment was sufficient. This sign is not a prediction, and it is not a message about what will happen next. God does not usually guide by forecasting events. God guides by restoring balance in the present. When the present becomes coherent, the future organizes itself without force. Many people expect a sign to feel dramatic, something unmistakable, emotional, or overwhelming. But divine guidance often works by reducing noise rather than adding information. When unnecessary tension fades, what remains becomes easier to trust. This sign is best understood as directional clarity, not a command, not a promise, but an internal knowing about what supports peace and what quietly drains it. Peace here does not mean comfort or ease. It means alignment. It means your inner parts are no longer pulling against each other. You may notice that one option feels calmer even if it looks more demanding. Another option may look appealing but creates subtle unease. God's guidance often reveals itself through this contrast. The body recognizes coherence before the mind explains it. Peace is not passivity. It is the absence of internal conflict. When you consider something aligned, you may feel less need to justify it, less need to argue with yourself. That reduction in inner debate is the sign. This clarity does not arrive as certainty about outcomes. It arrives as confidence about direction. You may still not know how things will unfold, but you sense which way feels honest to walk. God's signs rarely say, "This will succeed," or "This will fail." They say, "This fits who you are becoming," or "This pulls you away from yourself." Fit feels grounding. Misalignment feels draining, even when it looks attractive. You might notice that certain patterns no longer hold your attention. Replaying the same scenarios feels tiring rather than reassuring. This is not loss of interest. It is growth moving past what no longer teaches. The sign may also show up as a decreased tolerance for compromise that costs you peace. What you once accepted without question now feels heavier. This does not mean you are becoming rigid. It means your boundaries are becoming clearer. God's guidance often reduces the need for explanation. When something is right, you feel less compelled to defend it. When something is wrong, you feel less tempted to rationalize it. Silence replaces argument. This clarity can feel unsettling because it closes doors quietly, not with drama, but with diminished pull. Possibilities you once kept open no longer ask for your energy. That narrowing is not punishment. It is focus. Focus does not eliminate difficulty. It eliminates confusion. Difficulty with clarity feels different than difficulty with doubt. You may still struggle, but you will know why you are choosing to stay. The sign is not asking you to abandon reason. It is asking you to include peace as a valid form of knowledge. Peace is not laziness. It is the signal that effort is no longer being wasted. God's guidance often arrives through what no longer feels necessary. Less urgency, less explaining, less fixing. When those fall away, what remains is simpler and more stable. This is why the sign does not shout. Shouting would activate fear. Fear clouds discernment. God's signs respect your capacity to choose without pressure. You are not expected to feel joy. You are not expected to feel inspired. Calm certainty is enough. That calm is not emptiness. It is coherence. If you find yourself thinking, "I already know this," that thought is not dismissive. It is accurate. This sign exists to confirm what is already aligned internally. God does not override your will. God meets it where it is settled. When your will stops fighting itself, guidance becomes visible. This clarity does not isolate you from others. It simply loosens attachments that required you to abandon yourself. That loosening can feel like relief mixed with seriousness. The sign you are receiving is subtle because it is stable. It does not need intensity to last. It needs honesty. You are not being asked to act immediately. You are being asked to recognize what feels whole. That recognition is the sign. And once recognized, it does not need to repeat. When you accept this clarity, the world around you does not suddenly rearrange itself. God's guidance rarely works that way. What changes first is internal friction. The constant weighing, second-guessing, and quiet self-negotiation begin to loosen. Acceptance does not create fireworks. It creates space. Space where confusion no longer dominates your attention. Space where decisions stop circling endlessly and begin to rest. This resting is not avoidance. It is resolution forming quietly. After this point, many people notice that choices feel simpler, not because options disappear, but because some of them no longer ask for energy. You are not forcing yourself away from them. They simply lose relevance. God's guidance often works by reducing pull rather than issuing commands. Externally, life may look unchanged. The same routines, the same conversations, the same responsibilities. Internally, something is steadier. You are less reactive, less compelled to explain yourself, less invested in defending decisions that already feel settled. This does not mean everything feels easy. Alignment is not comfort. It is coherence. Challenges may remain, but they no longer feel confusing. You know why you are engaging with them. That knowing reduces exhaustion. God's sign does not require you to seek confirmation again tomorrow. Reaching for repetition would pull you back into doubt. Guidance offered once is meant to be lived from, not checked against. New questions may arise later. That is part of life. This sign does not eliminate uncertainty forever. What it provides is a reference point, a felt sense of what clarity feels like inside your body and mind. When confusion returns, as it sometimes will, you will recognize the difference. You will know what alignment feels like because you have touched it. That memory becomes a quiet compass. You are not expected to make a dramatic move today. You may take no outward action at all. Sometimes the most significant shift is simply stopping what no longer fits. Non-action can be alignment when it prevents further misdirection. God's guidance does not rush outcomes. It stabilizes direction. Once direction is stable, outcomes adjust in their own time. Trying to accelerate that process only recreates pressure. This clarity does not make you flawless. You may still make mistakes. The difference is that mistakes no longer disorient you completely. You correct sooner. You recover faster. You do not lose yourself in the process. There is no ritual required to seal this moment. No declaration you must make. Recognition is enough. Walking with it is enough. God does not demand performance. God offers orientation. Orientation allows you to move without fear of being lost, even when the path is not fully visible. If today passes quietly, that does not diminish its importance. Some days matter because they stop confusion from continuing, not because they announce something new. You are free to continue your day without searching for signs. You have been given what you need for now. More information would not help. More trust will. Clarity does not shout to be remembered. It settles and becomes part of how you stand. You do not need to hold onto it tightly. It will stay because it fits. And from this steadier place, whatever comes next can meet you without resistance. That is enough. You can continue